At what point does the brand step in and go, right, we're opening a lawsuit against you but I was still working 2 jobs. Every video was doing over 100,000 views. Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 at my main job, finishing work there, driving straight to the restaurant and then getting changed at the restaurant and working 6 till 10 in the restaurant. It was just purely just work.
It's 2015, and a guy in the UK ends up with a crashed Audi TT. Instead of going through insurance and moving on, he decides to fix it himself. Along the way, he starts filming the process and uploading it to YouTube. At the time, it wasn't some big plan. It was just a damaged car, a camera, and something he wanted to try. But that small decision ended up setting everything in motion for Matt Armstrong. People started watching, and more importantly, they kept coming back. As he worked through that first rebuild, he naturally fell into a style that made the videos feel different. The idea was straightforward. Take a car that looks beyond saving, rebuild it step by step, and show the full process without skipping the difficult parts. That included delays, wrong parts, and moments where things didn't go as planned. He didn't cut those out, and that honesty made a big difference.
Do you find yourself chasing numbers?
It's a bit weird for me. I speak to a camera better than I speak to people.
When the car finally came back together, it felt earned rather than staged. As the channel grew, the project started getting bigger, and that's where things began to shift. The cars he was working on were no longer simple machines. Modern supercars are much more complex, with software, sensors, and systems controlling how everything works. After a crash, many of these cars enter a locked state that isn't easy to reverse without the manufacturer's involvement. So even when the physical repair is done properly, the car can still refuse to function. That's where a new kind of challenge appears. It's no longer just about rebuilding damaged cars, but about dealing with systems that limit how those cars can be repaired. And that same tension carries through all the builds we're covering today. Each one shows a different side of it, and together they explain how Matt Armstrong's content grew into something much bigger than just car rebuilds.
This is it. This is where we're rebuilding it. We're gonna do it right here.
And that becomes very clear with the Chiron Persport build. The main reason this one sits at the top is the car itself. The Bugatti Chiron Persport isn't a normal supercar. Only 60 were made, and it was built as a more aggressive, track-focused version of an already rare car. At around 3 million euros, once a car like this gets crashed, everything around it changes. The stakes go up, the attention goes up, and suddenly everyone on the internet becomes a certified expert on what should or shouldn't be done. What really pushed this into a bigger spotlight was how the story spread. The car was linked to influencer Alex Gonzalez, and once the idea of repairing it outside official Bugatti channels came up, things escalated quickly. Mate Rimac stepped in with concerns about safety and liability, which makes sense because this isn't exactly a car you fix like a Corolla in your garage. From that point, the rebuild started feeling less like a project and more like a live debate. Then came the moment that changed everything. After months of work, the car finally started and moved under its own power. That's where the whole conversation shifted. Before that, most people were focused on whether it should even be attempted. After that, the focus moved to what happens next, because now it was clear the rebuild was actually working. You can see it clearly in how people reacted. Some are fully behind it and love the fact that someone just went ahead and did it anyway. Others are a bit more cautious and keep asking how complete a rebuild like this can really be without full factory support. A lot of the discussion keeps circling the same points, like parts access, software locks, and whether the car will ever be truly done or just mostly done. Now the focus has moved forward. It's about whether the car can return to normal use. That means everything working properly, all systems behaving, and the car actually being driven without throwing a warning light every 5 seconds. And that uncertainty is exactly why people are still watching.
This is one of the most expensive cars Rashford owns. He bought it for £700,000. And I've just bought it. Only issue is, it looked far from what it did when it was new.
If the Bugatti build feels like an engineering challenge taken to the extreme, the Marcus Rashford Wraith sits on the other end. This one is more about the story around the car. It already had attention before Matt even touched it. It's Rashford's Rolls Royce, a heavily customized Mansory build involved in a crash and written off and then picked up by a YouTuber to bring it back. The whole thing already feels like a storyline before the rebuild even starts. The backstory is pretty clear. In September 2023, Rashford was involved in a late-night crash after returning from a match. He was fine, but the car wasn't. That setup alone changes how people look at the rebuild. It doesn't feel like fixing a car, it feels more like bringing something back that shouldn't have been lost. And this isn't just any Wraith either. It's a Mansory build, which means it already stands out even before the crash. It's the kind of car people recognize instantly. The turning point here is when Matt actually buys it from auction. That's when the rebuild really begins, and that's also when it becomes clear how complicated it's going to be. The costs, the parts, the small details that keep adding up, and then something unexpected happens. Rashford's side gets involved, offering help with parts and information. That changes the tone of the whole project. It stops feeling like someone rebuilding a celebrity car and starts feeling like the story is continuing from both sides. Then, it goes one step further when Mansory gets involved. They ask for the car to come back to them for finishing touches. That moment stands out because now the car is back where it was originally built, but in a completely different condition. It's like the project has come full circle, but with a completely different journey behind it. The reaction to this build is also different. People aren't really debating whether it should be done, they're more interested in watching how far it can go. There's something about seeing a written-off luxury car come back that keeps people hooked, especially when it has a story attached to it. The fact that it's Rashford's car adds one layer, and the rebuild adds another. And from here, the story naturally moves to what happens after. Once the car is fully rebuilt, where does it go? Does it stay with Matt? Does it get sold? Does it somehow end up back close to where it started? That question becomes part of the appeal. There's also a small but important detail in the background with Rashford's connection to Fair Share, which adds a bit more meaning to the whole thing. It gives the project a sense that it's not just about the car, even if that's what brought everyone in to watch.
This M3 was crashed into a house, and I've just bought it.
Compared to the hypercars, the crashed into a house BMW M3 feels a lot more grounded, and that's exactly why it still makes the list. It shows how messy things can get even before you're dealing with million-dollar cars. The car itself is a big part of that. The G80 M3 isn't just a fast sedan you fix and move on from. It's packed with electronics, systems, and everything working together. So when it's damaged, you're not just replacing parts, you're trying to get the whole thing to work again, like nothing ever happened. The way this build starts is very on brand for Matt. He picks up a wrecked M3 that reportedly crashed into a house, and from the first look, you can tell this isn't going to be straightforward. The damage is serious, and there's this extra layer of curiosity, because people are also trying to figure out how the crash even happened in the first place. The reaction to this one is a bit more mixed. Since it's not some rare hypercar, some people look at it and think it doesn't really make sense to rebuild, especially with the salvage history. Others don't really care about that side of it. They're watching for the process, the problem solving, and how far the rebuild can actually go. That back and forth shows up a lot in discussions around the project. In the bigger picture, this build kind of sits in the middle. It bridges the gap between the earlier, simpler projects and the bigger, high-end builds. It shows that the same approach still works even when the car is more modern and complicated. And unlike some of the bigger builds that are still ongoing, this one has a clear start and finish, which makes it feel more complete.
I've just bought myself a Lamborghini Revuelto, one of the newest Lamborghinis out, with a small issue.
If you want the clearest example of a rebuild turning into a software problem, the Revuelto project is it. This car represents where modern supercars are heading. Hybrid power, high voltage systems, and built-in protection that can shut the whole car down after a crash. To understand why this one got so much attention, you have to look at what Lamborghini actually made here. The Revuelto is their first V12 hybrid, pushing over 1,000 horsepower by combining a new engine with electric motors. But the important part isn't just the power, it's how everything is connected. This isn't a car you simply repair and start again. After a crash, it's designed to protect itself, and that can mean locking itself down completely. The way this build starts feels like a great deal at first. Matt buys a heavily damaged Revuelto for much less than its original price, and on paper, it looks like another big rebuild. But very quickly, it turns into something else. The car doesn't just need fixing, it refuses to come back to life. And that's where the whole project shifts, because now the challenge isn't just mechanical, it's getting past a system that doesn't want to reset. What makes this even more frustrating is that the main issue isn't visible damage. The bigger problem is the car's locked state and how difficult it is to clear it without manufacturer-level access. Even when the physical work is done, the car can still stay inactive. At one point, it was basically sitting there looking complete, but unable to function properly, which changes how people see the entire rebuild. The reaction to this one is different from the others. People aren't just watching the process, they're thinking about what it means going forward. Some respect the effort, and like that, Matt shows everything as it is, including when things don't work. Others get frustrated seeing a car that looks finished, but is still blocked by software. And the same question keeps coming up again and again. What happens when you can fix everything physically, but still can't use what you own? Looking ahead, this build points toward where things are going. It suggests that future rebuilds won't just depend on tools and skills, but also on access, permissions, and whether manufacturers allow certain things to be done. Even after all the visible work, there's still a layer that only the brand controls. And that's what makes the Revuelto one of the craziest builds.
So guys, Hannah had a little bit of an accident. Yeah, so we won't go into detail what actually happened, but as you can see, it's damage to the TT pretty bad.
And when you compare that to where it all started, the contrast is huge. For Matt Armstrong, that starting point was the Audi TT MK2, the one we mentioned at the start of the video. It was the kind of car that felt special, but still within reach. Recognizable, desirable, and not so rare that rebuilding it felt impossible. That made it perfect for an early project. What matters is how it began. The car was crashed, and instead of fixing it privately, Matt decided to film the process. That's where everything started. Looking back, you can see the format taking shape. A damaged car becomes a project, the project becomes content, and people start following along. As the rebuild progresses, the audience grows with it. That's why the TT still stands out. It shows the idea works because of the process and how it's shared, not the price of the car. Even now, people point back to it as the real starting point. By early 2026, the comment section around Matt Armstrong's biggest builds has become its own storyline, and the same themes keep coming up across different cars, access, trust, and what happens next. First, access. The Bugatti and Revuelto builds showed how restricted modern cars can be, from parts and VIN controls to software locks that normal tools can't fix. A lot of the discussion now isn't about fixing damage, it's about whether you're even allowed to. Second, trust. People stick with Matt because he shows the setbacks. Mistakes aren't hidden, and that makes the final result feel real. When builds get controversial, that transparency matters. Third, what comes next? These builds show that the real challenge isn't just finding a wreck anymore, it's finishing it in a way that actually feels complete. Getting a car to run is one thing, getting it fully usable is another, and that's where things are heading. The next craziest builds won't just be about expensive cars, they'll be about whether someone can work through software limits, access restrictions, and manufacturer control. The Revuelto makes that clear. Even after all the work, the biggest challenge can still be getting the car to accept that it's ready to go again. Tuna No Crust, signing off.